we're going to start the day. We're going to have first a very brief session of welcoming remarks and wrap-up session and sharing some of the view through the lenses of Laura Femenias, who is our Deputy Director for the P3 Authority. She's going to help us start with the welcoming remarks. So welcome, Laura. She's been pretty busy these days, but I guess she's happy that today is the second day. Also, we're going to have the Consul General from the British Consulate from Miami, and this is the view that we want to provide today as a wrap-up for yesterday and looking forward for today. So they want to have a good conversation and share with you some of the insights and impressions. So, Laura, we'll take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are you feeling today? Well, thank you all for being here again and to be back with us. Yesterday, we had a very interesting day with a lot of panels and discussions, new investment opportunities, new projects ideas. We had a great keynote speaker, Mark Romoff, which we're very thankful for participating with us here in the summit. But no less important, we also talk about resiliency and recovery. So before we start the opening remarks, I want everyone to give a round of applause to Consul General David Roger, which is joining us here from the United Kingdom. And Consul, I wanted to start to see what were your key takeaways from yesterday's discussions.
My big key takeaway was that Puerto Rico is ready, and that's great to see. I was down here before last year's disasters, and in my consulate, we also have responsibility for some of our overseas territories in the region, who were very badly affected by the hurricanes, so Anguilla, British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands. So we can understand some of the challenges that are being faced here. And I think the governor set the tone very well when he said what he wants his government to do is be obstacle busters. And I think that's what we found in the UK, is that you have to get rid of all the extraneous legislation, the bits and pieces that are going to get in the way of reconstruction to get your economy to be future ready. So I thought that was really, really optimistic and upbeat, and a great tone for the rest of the day.
So if you have to summarize and to tell us, how do you envision the opportunities here in Puerto Rico for the future and in the long run?
Well, I mean, what we've done a lot of through my consulate is talk about the future and how we're going to tackle some of these challenges and how we're going to use private money to help build public infrastructure. And it's about risk for us, essentially, and how we de-risk our public infrastructure going forward. So we've worked throughout mainland US. We've been to Boston, we've been to Miami, we've been to DC, Seattle, Vancouver, Houston. All of these cities are facing big issues to deal with natural catastrophe. And what we've been talking about is how do you transfer that risk from the public sector into the private sector? And that conversation here today and yesterday has been absolutely perfect. I mean, not only making sure that the legislative process is in the right place, getting into the laws in place, that is the actual essential part. We've had getting on for 25 years experience of P3 in the UK. We've done over 700 projects. It's worth about $80 billion. We found that you can't do that without getting the legislation right. So those conversations yesterday about the laws being put in place here are essential. You have to generate the faith in the capital markets, again, essential. And a country or islands like Puerto Rico, where we know there are issues around the debt, generating that faith, showing the capital markets that you mean business, showing the capital markets that, this time there is going to be not only opportunity, but long-term growth going forward from these initiatives is absolutely essential. And then obviously getting the technical expertise to do it. Again, in the UK, nearly all of our government departments has used P3, or we now call it PF2. We're on the second version of it in the UK. And I think that message again came through very, very strongly yesterday, that all the pieces are being put in place to make this work.
And yesterday we actually announced another RFQ of a metering unit program for PRASA here in Puerto Rico, and the disability and convenience study of an unsolicited proposal related to the touristic ports of Puerto Rico. And we also discussed the different pipelines of the P3 projects. What are your thoughts on those pipelines that we already identify as the authority?
I think they're great. I mean, as I say, in the UK, we've used it from everything from building our Navy ships all the way through to hospitals, schools, you name it. So I don't think there's any restrictions on how creative you can be. I think the other really, really positive thing about the unsolicited proposals and your approach to them here in Puerto Rico is you have to have that private sector buy-in. You have to have industry saying, we want to do this. Industry doesn't like being given a fait accompli. We've got a project for you, now come and give us your money. It doesn't work like that. So the idea that industry can come up with these ideas and then have a real stake in how they're developed, I think is fantastic. And I think the fact that you're already looking at 2 of the 7 proposals that are in the pipeline as unsolicited ones is a really, really strong, favorable factor.
And what are your expectations for today's discussion that are already in the program? What is your sense of them?
Well, I think, as I said before, that getting the capital markets engaged is essential. Again, in the UK, we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. We've got a whole separate task force just looking at how you engage private finance in the future economy and in the green economy. We know that there's a lot of risk capital out there. There's maybe over 40 trillion pounds worth of risk capital. Less than 2% of that is linked to catastrophe and risk finance in that way. All the rest is linked to the health of the global markets. And so delinking, spreading that risk is just a massive opportunity for financial capital. So I think that discussion this morning is going to be really, really interesting and showing how now we're in a much better position to be able to evaluate risk and transfer it. And then I think looking for the political leadership is something we are going to need. Industry absolutely will need it. So I think the comments from Governor Scott, who's obviously been a great supporter of Puerto Rico and who we work closely with in Florida as well, will be very interesting. And of course, the governor again coming back to reiterate those messages that he gave us so forcefully yesterday.
So if you have to say Puerto Rico is ready, you already mentioned that. If you have to say another phrase to promote Puerto Rico in the United Kingdom, the European markets, and the US markets, let's say all over the globe, what will your message be?
I think Puerto Rico is now at a position where it can skip a technological generation, go straight to being the future-ready economy that it has been in the past, and it will be again in the future. It's a fantastic opportunity. Industry and the markets, and what I will go and tell our British business, some of whom is here already and here with us today, is that there's a great opportunity because we know that there are going to be funds coming in. We know that discussions are underway to get the big structural issues sorted out. And it's a fantastic opportunity to build those partnerships for the future. And I think in the region that Puerto Rico is, there's a great opportunity throughout the region as well. So looking to work with Puerto Rico as a regional partner on resilience and reconstruction, and more to the point, the future economy that comes after that.
Well, on behalf of the government of Puerto Rico and Ricardo Rosselló, we want to thank you once again for being with us today. And every one of you that have an interest in joining future partnerships in Puerto Rico and to come invest in the island, I hope that you enjoyed this second day of the summit. And we look to hear from you afterwards. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy this second day of the summit.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, David. Thank you for your participation. That's a very interesting angle, and I want to take the opportunity to thank the two important delegations that we receive among everyone else, and that is obviously the delegation of the British Consulate and delegation of the Canadian Consulate. They're both here, and they're both consul generals have been very committed to Puerto Rico. So thank you for your participation and support. Okay, having completed this part of the program, I think we're gonna do a more relaxing, very brief session now. As you know, first of foremost, Puerto Rico is a touristic destination. We wanna every time we work in a convention like this, in a conference or any other event, there's always the tourism company involved and looking for opportunities to appeal to that vacation portion that all of us have within us. So thinking about Puerto Rico as a touristic and besides business destination is also part of the objective that we're trying to accomplish for today. So we're going to take 15 minutes, and I'm going to introduce Carla Campos, our Director of Tourism Company, to come on to the stage and tell us about how can we be enchanted by Puerto Rico. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, we have an intimate crowd, and this P3 Summit is all about the cornerstone of recovery. So I want to take a few minutes to walk you through how tourism has been at the heart of Puerto Rico's economic resurgence after Hurricane Maria and Irma. So I want to walk you through how we've done it and how public and private sector have worked closely to really put an economic sector up at the forefront of our development efforts. So the message we are telling the world right now is that Puerto Rico is ready to enchant. And we don't just say it, we actually measure it. So on December 20th, we formally announced that Puerto Rico was open for tourism. So as the world thought we were underwater and without electricity, our hotels were open, our attractions were open, our cruise ships were arriving. So I want to tell you the story of how we got there and how we go about measuring these things, because we don't just say it, we actually monitor it. So right now we have about 180 shore excursions that are available for our cruise ship passengers. 16 out of our 17 casinos are open. Our islands of Vieques and Culebra are also open. 130 out of our 150 hotels are open for leisure travelers and business travelers. And that's about 89% of our tourism inventory and our hotel inventory. Our airlines are operating, and 28 of them are serving our destination. And over 4,000 restaurants all around the island are serving some of our great cuisine. 186 of our points of interest are open or attractions, and 55 tour operators are actually serving our clients. So these indicators we've been monitoring actually from the day of the hurricane. We took it upon us to actually show the world through numbers how Puerto Rico was getting up and running. We're actually monitoring these on a weekly basis and sharing them with the private sector as well in order to inform decision making. But I want to walk you through a few of these examples of how the public and the private sector work closely in order to get tourism up and running in Puerto Rico. And I'll start with air access. 2 weeks after the hurricane, we started with 20 flights leaving and coming into San Juan. And that's a very small number as compared to our 130 flights that we traditionally get. Today, we have about 110 of those daily flights that are operational. But that's a very important milestone. And the reason for that is that we set ourselves a goal. We wanted to increase capacity. We wanted those seats back up. And we knew that it was going to be a hard road to climb, and that other destinations like New Orleans took 10 years to get that seat capacity back up on their books. We wanted to learn from the best. We wanted to learn from those destinations that did it right, and we wanted to get our capacity up within a year. So we started in November with 30% less of our seat capacity as compared to the previous year. Now in May, we are just about 4% under last year's seat capacity. And moving over to December, we are on track to exceeding the 2016 levels and 2017 levels with 27% year on year. So we're actually very well on track to reduce that gap in terms of seat capacity so that we have sufficient airlift, not just for leisure travel, also for business travel and for our investors. We will be trending positive this fall. So by September, we will be at the same level as the 2016 levels in terms of seat capacity. And that recovery is comparable to other destinations, like Cancun after the swine flu, and definitely at a more accelerated pace than destinations like New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. How have we done it? We have new airlines serving Puerto Rico. Frontier Airlines started flying last June, and within a year, now serve 6 destinations. That's the second biggest airline in terms of destinations served, next to JetBlue, who's our largest carrier. Within a year, they started from 1 destination to 3, and all of a sudden, we have them serving 6 destinations. In addition to that, larger planes. Just last week, JetBlue started traveling from Santo Domingo to San Juan on an Airbus A321. That's their newest and biggest aircraft. JetBlue actually last week also announced that their seat capacity as of June 15th is on par to last year's levels. Why is this specifically important? JetBlue announced in an investor's call late last year that they anticipated that they would resume their capacity to previous levels by late this year or early next year. We didn't think that was quick enough, and we knew that our demand could be up quicker than that. So we worked closely with JetBlue, and we challenged them. We said, you know what? You count on government support. What can you do to increase your capacity? So we started working with our marketing efforts. We actually didn't invest much in order to make it happen. We just collaborated closely with JetBlue. June 15th, we announced that they were on par to last year's levels 6 months before what they had planned for. And that was very significant. More frequencies. Delta just announced that they are adding a 4th frequency to Atlanta and to New York City from San Juan. And we have other destinations, other airlines like Iberia serving Madrid at higher frequencies this summer. More routes. We actually have Spirit that just announced that they are flying nonstop from Aguadilla to Orlando as of October 4th daily. That is very significant because just a few months after the hurricane, we're actually seeing growth and a confidence in the sector that comes as a result of that strong public-private sector partnership. Where do we serve? We are served by a lot of the airlines to some of the top cities in the continental US. And in addition to that, we have flights to Bogota on a daily basis, to Spain, to Germany on a weekly basis via Condor, Panama, and Canada on the for season travel. How is this possible? Again, we have our P3 that works really well with Aerostar. We actually joined forces with a private sector company, and now they are improving our facilities. But they count on the public sector in order to make those commercial agreements with the airlines and ensure that we have sufficient airlift. So it's not just about giving Aerostar the administration of the airport, it's actually following through with a strong partnership throughout so that our commercial operations are sufficient for all of the improvements that are being done at the airport. And I want to talk to you a little bit about our cruise industry, because for us, this was really important after the hurricane. We decided that if we didn't have power for a little bit, if some of our hotels were maxed out with a lot of first responders, we still needed tourism back. We needed those taxi drivers to have business. We needed those artisans to sell their crafts. And we needed those attractions to be receiving travelers. So low-hanging fruit for us was the cruise industry. We knew we needed to get up there, and we needed to get the CEO's attentions. So we actually started bringing them over one by one so that they could see our ports infrastructure, so that they could see that we were back up and running. And 2 weeks after the hurricane, we started receiving our first home port with the Adventure of the Seas. There was no electricity in Old San Juan, but we had home ports coming. Home ports are those operations where travelers come into the port and then leave to go to other destinations. So we made it work, and then by November 30th, we already had our transit calls, which is those stops in the island where people actually get to enjoy the destination. So by November 30th, our industry was up and running and ready to receive leisure travelers. We're going to close the year and the season with 1.2 million travelers by June 30th. And when we think of per semester, we have record-breaking arrivals in this first half of 2018. So if I compare this half of 2018 with the same period of time in 2017, we are surpassing our goals. So we have 14 cruise ships that are home porting in San Juan this semester as compared to 10 last year in the same time. And not just more vessels, but bigger vessels. The Freedom of the Seas recently substituted the Adventure of the Seas that had been home porting in San Juan for 15 years. And that didn't just happen ad hoc. This is a larger vessel that accommodates for 1,000 additional passengers on a weekly basis. How did that happen? Strong public and private sector partnerships. The port and Royal Caribbean jointly invested $6 million in revamping that port infrastructure to accommodate for a larger ship. And Omar Marrero, actually, director of P3, was actually the director of the Ports Authority and started those negotiations early on in 2017. And we made it happen and received the Freedom of the Seas just a few weeks ago. We're not just growing, we're breaking records. For next season, we're going to be breaking our previous record that we established in 2015 of 1.5 million passengers with 1.7. And that's going to be a huge milestone. 200,000 more passengers are going to be arriving in Puerto Rico this next season than our previous record in 2015. That represents $250 million in economic impact for Puerto Rico. Hotels and lodging, and this is my favorite part because this is the story of how we come back stronger. We currently have 11,500 rooms available out of our 15,000 room inventory. So you may be asking, what's up with the rest? Well, actually, we're remodeling, we're revamping, we're seizing this opportunity to actually improve the quality of our infrastructure, improve the quality of our service. So about 4,200 rooms will be renovated by mid-2019, and that's approximately a third of our inventory. It's going to allow us to compete at a whole different ballgame. We actually have the Wyndham Rio Mar that opened after a quick remodeling. In October, we have the St. Regis and the Ritz Reserve opening their doors after complete overhauls. Same with Meliá, Cocoa Beach. And just today, El San Juan partially opened after remodeling as well. But we're not just remodeling, we're building more. We have a robust development pipeline that is going to be adding about 1,500 rooms to our inventory. How do we make that happen? We actually have some really key cornerstone projects that are currently under construction. We have the Four Seasons in Cayo Largo, adding 150 rooms, and that's $172 million being invested in Puerto Rico right now. Rincon Blue Water is a $150 million investment in adding 250 rooms in our West Coast. District Life and Aloft Convention, you see it right across the street. That's going to be a game changer for the San Juan area. It's going to be an entertainment district and also a hotel that adds another 175 rooms to our inventory. The JW Marriott will be a $255 million investment and add 400 rooms. This is significant. In addition to those are part of 30 hotels that are currently under construction or just about to start construction. And that's all happening right now. A few months after the hurricane, we're not just coming back. We're making a comeback. Now, in addition to our infrastructure, in addition to our air access and our cruise access, there's one little thing that we really need to leverage, and that's the increased awareness. All of a sudden, everyone knows where Puerto Rico is. Everyone knows we're a US territory, that you don't need a passport to travel to Puerto Rico, that we're around big, big ocean, and that we're actually a great place to travel. However, we do know that there's a negative perception associated to Puerto Rico right now. Our challenge is harnessing that increased awareness and converting it into interest in travel, into interest in investment. We benchmarked. We saw what other destinations did. We saw how New Orleans is now better than it was before. That's our north. That's what we want to be, and that's what we're working towards. What you see here is some of the coverage we've been able to harness in just over the last few months. New York Post called us one of the 15 must-visit bucket list destinations for 2018. Forbes cataloged us as one of the 33 most affordable places to travel in 2018. New York Times, USA Today, TripAdvisor, USA Today, Travel, and so many others have been talking about Puerto Rico. Yes, we have been receiving a lot of negative press, but now it's about how do we harness that attention and convert it into something positive. San Juan was listed by Lonely Planet as one of the top 10 cities to travel in 2018. This was just after a few weeks after the hurricane, and this is really significant. What has government done in order to capitalize on this? Governor Ricardo Rosselló Nevares had one big project with tourism, and that was to make sure that marketing could be in the private sector hands in order to have long-lasting results and long-lasting marketing efforts that don't change from administration to administration. So we created the Destination Marketing Organization that is an independent, public and private-run organization that will exist via funding from the public sector through room tax revenues. The Puerto Rico Tourism Company now has a contract with this organization, and this organization is going to be responsible for marketing Puerto Rico moving forward. What are we going to do as government now that we leave marketing in the hands of an independent organization? Now we're focused on the things that have traditionally not been attended to. Careful planning, proper planning, investing in development, promoting air and maritime access, pursuing investors and capital investment for hotel development, management of the destination, harnessing data, insights, and intelligence that is able to allow us to inform our decision-making at the public and the private sector. There is a lot to be done, but the private sector plays a key role in all of this. And the government of Puerto Rico and Governor Ricardo Rosselló was committed to establishing structures that allowed us to do this. Our formula? We knew that we needed to transition quickly from recovery to revamping. And while other sectors of the economy had more of a challenge to do it, we knew tourism needed to be at the forefront of driving that revamping and driving that resurgence. In addition to that, we found strength in partnership. Our historic cruise industry recovery would not have been possible without our private sector partners. Our airline confidence that is now yielding outperformance would not have been possible if we wouldn't have counted with those airline partners. Same with our surge in hospitality revamping, and same with new hotel development in the works right now. Finally, we have a few very, very interesting projects in terms of tourism with the P3 model. And together, all of those things will ensure that tourism is at the forefront of our economic recovery. So Puerto Rico, right now, is ready to host again. We're anticipating growth as compared to last year. We are renovating our offer to deliver new and innovative experiences. We are leveraging the opportunities we have at hand. Some may think they are challenges. We really see them as opportunities. And we're building and maximizing strength through our partnerships. All this put together places tourism right at the forefront of where we need to be. We're going to be surpassing all of those indicators and surpassing what other destinations have done. And we're really betting on tourism as that key driver of economic growth. So with that, I encourage you to look to Puerto Rico, to know that in Puerto Rico you have a strong public sector that is willing to support you on the private side, and that we have the right structures in place in order to make sure that tourism can drive our economic growth. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. What a great story of coming back. I heard 9 months ago, we all saw in the news the level of devastation that Puerto Rico experienced, and I think it's an amazing story that we're here, and that Carla is showing these numbers only in 9 months. So it tells you a great story about the level of commitment and the hard work that the government of Puerto Rico and the private sector and everyone is putting together here. So